Hello, hello. Welcome to day 2 of the Diet Culture Funhouse Challenge. Hope you had some interesting insights that came with doing your questionnaire, the Diet Culture Funhouse Challenge questions, and then also the challenge from yesterday to try to see yourself the way that God sees you and to list 5 ways that you can see ways that He sees you. Today, we're going to be diving into, if we covered appearance yesterday, and today we're going to be diving into, let me share my screen here. There we go. Yesterday, we talked about the warped mirror of appearance, and today we're talking about the warped mirror of weight and weight loss. And this is kind of one of my favorite ones to talk about because there's so much that is just messed up. And if you're here, likely you have had issues with your being concerned about your weight, whether you actually had issues with your weight or not, maybe a different thing, but you're concerned about that. And you've likely tried to lose weight with varying degrees of success. So let's dive into this a little bit more here. So first, the cultural norm. Every day we're going to talk about the cultural norm, what the results of that norm are, what the reality is, and what the possibilities are, and then give you a challenge at the end. So our cultural norm is not going to be surprising to you, that there's this equation of weight and health and thinness, that if you look at a person and they're an acceptable size, you make assumptions about their health. And that's completely culturally trained for us to do that. And lots of weight loss not just weight loss, health professionals do this as well. There are many doctors my husband's doctor he had an issue and they couldn't find it was, oh, well, I don't know what's wrong, but lose weight. It's like, okay. Or other doctors that have suggested, without any other health indications, I've had a doctor suggest that I lose weight. It's like there's no health indication as to why this could be a problem. So let's hold off on that. And then there's this obsession with body size. Consider how often you may have pursued weight loss, regardless of any health indicators. How much time is spent thinking about our weight, our shape, our size? Ugh. So the result of that, of all of this focus, this thoughts of weight and health being completely connected, which I'm not saying that there's no indication, that there's no connection between weight and health. That weight can obviously have an impact, can have, but it's not automatically does have. And you may be thinking, well, what about the BMI? What if I have an unhealthy BMI? If you're a person who believes in the standards of the BMI, the suggestions of the BMI, I highly recommend you do a little bit of investigation on the history of the body mass index. That body mass index is not being used the way it was intended to. It, not surprisingly, ties back to money, specifically insurance companies. And so it is what it is. And I'm not saying one thing one way or another about that, but what I am saying, it is not the be all end all of determining health, determining possible health. So just be leery of the body mass index. If you have any questions about that, book that free 15-minute call on my Calendly link, and we can talk about that, because if you're still thinking that the body mass index is the thing, it's not. Let's just leave that there for now. But we can have many other indicators. But the results of this focus on thinking that thin equals fit is fraught with really not good results. Let's take a look at some of those results, which I am sure that you have seen in your life already. You may come here having tried all the diets. The thing about this is I used to think that I wasn't a dieter. Because I've always had this mentality that it doesn't make sense to me to go on a diet, because you go on a diet, just that terminology then implies that at some point in time, you're going to go off the diet and they're going to be on this diet for a certain length of time to accomplish the goal that you have set. But if you go on a diet, make those changes that are in accordance with whatever diet you're trying. And then when you go off the diet, what happens? You go back to all the same eating habits that you had before. And it doesn't address, diets do not address our fundamental relationship with food. All they do is they dictate how to eat. And that's a whole different thing. That's not a healthy relationship with food, being on a diet. Various diets can help us toward developing a healthy relationship with food, but many of them do the opposite. They help us have a less healthy relationship with food, and they don't do any of the exploration that's needed. It's just like somebody giving you a to-do list and not telling you why or what for. They just say, you do this to-do list, and at the end, that job will be done. In this case, the weight will be lost. But you have no idea, A, if it does work for you and you do lose the weight, what caused you to gain the weight in the first place? How did this work? And not just how did it work to lose the weight, but what's underneath all of that? It does nothing to address any of that. It doesn't tell you any of those whys. It doesn't, because it doesn't, a diet per se doesn't address that, other than the science of why they think that diet is the best. But dieting does not improve our relationship with food, and it can very much harm our relationship with food. And then here's the thing, you probably are aware of the statistics that 95, depending on where you look, 95 or more % of diets either A, don't work, you don't lose the weight that you think you're going to lose, or B, you lose the weight, but then you gain it back within, most people within a year, more than that within 3 years, and by 5 years, like 90% of the people have gained the weight back if they lost it. That's not a high success rate. And yet, when that happens, we blame ourselves that diet didn't work. If you had a teacher who had a long career and had 95% of their students that failed, you wouldn't be looking at the students. You'd be looking at that teacher. And yet here we are in that same situation, and we're blaming the students ourselves for the failure rate in that class. So how many more diets do we need to try? Once I looked at it, I started to say, I didn't consider myself a dieter. But then when I looked back, I went, oh, well, I've been on this diet and I went on that diet and I tried this diet. And even as somebody who wasn't a believer in the idea of dieting, I still had tried several different diets. That was really surprising to me when I actually stopped and looked back at that, because initially I went into this work thinking, oh, I'm not really a dieter. That's not really my thing. But I was wrong. What does that do to our emotional journey? Our emotional journey of these diets that we try, and most likely 90% or more chance fail at. That ties into, again, the guilt and the shame. We blame ourselves. We live with guilt and shame that either is self-induced or brought on from others. Oh, how often do people comment on other people's body sizes? Oh my gosh, what are you doing to lose weight? You look so great. When at the time we recorded this, Kelly Clarkson, very famous entertainer, had lost a lot of weight. And I heard almost no discussion of anything about her health. Actually, I have heard no discussion of anything about her health. It was all just, how did she do it? How did she do it? How did she do it? Not taking into consideration, I have no idea. Did she have some health issue? Did she try some diet that's really not healthy, but she just wanted to lose weight? I have no idea, because her health was never part of the discussion. People all just went, oh my gosh, she lost weight. How did she do that? Or people will comment, and we think we're being encouraging. Oh, look at you. I know you're trying that new diet and you're losing weight. You look so great. And that seems like it's encouraging. But what that does on the flip side is that if that doesn't stick, then it's whether we express it or not, the person feels like they've disappointed. Well, now I feel guilty because, yeah, I was looking so good. I did. Oprah's a very good example of this. We have seen her through the years go up and down, And she openly talks about the guilt and the shame that she felt, A, for her body being that size, and then B, after she's lost weight, gaining it back. And we've watched her do that, and the emotional journey that that's been. If you're someone who has tried many diets, you likely had a very similar experience, not quite as publicly as Oprah's, but still the same experience of feeling that guilt and that shame. A, that drive you to try the diet, and then B, that are just fueled and deepened when that diet doesn't work for you for whatever reason. We have more focus on weight than on healthy habits. I have this thing about before and after pictures. People post them as though they're focusing on their health. Oh, look at, I'm, going on this weight loss journey. Here's my before, here's my after. And I have a blog post on my website about the whole before and after thing. I'm not going to go into all of that right now. But what I will say is that if they're focusing on their health, why is it a picture of their body shape that they're posting and not a picture of, here's my cholesterol, here's my blood pressure, here are the meds that I was on, here's the way that I was living, how many times I was exercising in a week, how many times I was moving in a week. Here's all of this before, and now here's my cholesterol, and here's my blood pressure, and here's the medications that I'm not having to be on anymore. That's not what they're posting. What they're posting is body size, body size. That's not a focus on health. That's a focus on weight, and they're not the same thing. The current science, oh my goodness, is so much leaning toward and showing so much more that healthy habits have so much more impact on health than weight, than simply weight. A number on the scale is easier to track, and so it gives us more, it's a more immediate thing, gives more emphasis than other things that really impact our health. It's so much easier to hop on a scale and go, oh, this is what my weight is, than to pull out a blood pressure cuff if you have one, to test your blood sugar if you have the means to do that at home, to be tracking your sleep over time to see the quality of your sleep. It's not as immediate as jumping on a scale and seeing that number. Although all of those other things are much more impactful on your weight than what that number is on the scale. And we give so much emotional value to this scale. We give it, it's a bathroom appliance. And you've probably had the experience of stepping on the scale and liking the number and thinking, oh, yes. And you have that euphoric feeling, and then you bounce throughout the day because that number on that scale said something that you like seeing. And you've also probably had the experience of stepping on that scale and having it be a number that you don't want to see. Either you've been trying to lose weight and you're not, or maybe you've even gained weight. And then you look at that and it's like, even if you don't term it this way, the feeling is likely, I'm a failure. And then you go through the day feeling in that negative energy because of a bathroom appliance, who, by the way, can't actually say which, by the way, cannot even actually tell you an accurate indicator of your health. All that scale tells you is how much gravity happens to be pulling on you on this planet at that moment. It's just not an accurate thing to be basing our self-worth on, which unfortunately way too many of us do because that's what we're conditioned to do. Also, this is painful. The result of this conflation of health and weight, of thinness and health, or weight and ill health, because of that conflation and the things that we're taught about how much control we have over our weight, that this body shape and size is something that everybody can attain or close to it. There's an impact on relationships. On relationships, that's what life is built out of. The people that we interact with. I have a good friend she is just one of my heroes. She's one of the kindest, most intelligent. The way that this woman serves from all of her heart. She's a person I have never heard anyone say anything unkind about. Everybody, without exception, always only has nice things to say about her. And it's in a good way. It's not she's trying to people please. She's very sure of herself. However, she's living in a body that is larger than is acceptable in society. And there have been, I've talked to her about this, and there have been people, she's had experiences where people thought that she was stupid because of her body size. People have thought that she's lazy. She's one of the hardest working women I know. People have assumed many things about her because of her body size, things that 100% are not true. And so those people bar themselves from a relationship with her because of their judgment of how she looks. And that is a phenomenal loss. Now, sometimes the person that we're judging harshly about how we look is ourselves. And when we do that, not only does it harm our relationship with ourselves, but when we're living in that kind of space, it keeps us from being fully present and fully authentic and fully there in other relationships, from giving what we might, because we're feeling very hard on ourselves about this. And so it can damage our relationship with ourselves, which then in turn inhibits our relationships with other people. That's a lot. That's a lot to put on. It's a really treacherous result from this idea that weight equals health. That's amazing, and not in a good way. So our relationships are precious, precious things, and they deserve to be nurtured, and we deserve to have relationships with other people that are not impacted because of our judgments about the way that we look or our judgments about the way they look, assuming that somebody is not taking care of themselves. Going back to the picture yesterday of Shantae, that marathon or ultra marathon runner, who some people may look at her and judge her and think, oh my gosh, that woman just needs to stop eating and she needs to move more, or not stop eating so much and she needs to move more. Neither of which are true, but they make that judgment. And what does that do to any kind of relationship? Anyway, off of that soapbox for now. So what's the reality here? The reality is found, how does God view? The reality is always how God views this. That's the reality that we're working from. So going back to the very beginning of the Old Testament, in Genesis 1, verse 27, it says, so God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he him, male and female created he them. We are created in his image. And maybe you haven't realized this, but nowhere, anywhere in scripture is God's weight mentioned. It's just not a thing that's that he's concerned about. It's not, what he cares about is how you're caring for yourself. What are your habits? How are you taking care of yourself? What respect are you showing yourself? And what respect are you showing your body? But it's never about a number on a scale. We're created in his image. That means something. The reality is also that healthy habits matter more than weight. We covered that already. So what healthy habits are we talking about? We're talking about, how are you sleeping? We're talking about, obviously, how we're eating, the quality of food that we're able to access, the amount of food that we're able to access, and what we're putting in our mouths. We're talking about, are we moving our bodies the way our bodies were intended to be moved? And there are people that have, physical limitations on how they can move, but that doesn't mean that their body, unless you are completely paralyzed, there's some way that your body can move. Are we moving the way that our body is able, and encouraging that movement? The healthy habits are to know our purpose, to understand our purpose, and live from that purpose and for that purpose. That's a healthy habit. Stress management. I was just talking recently with some people about managing stress and reminding them that even good stress, even stress for good things, is still stress. And so our body responds to that in a stressful way. Our body doesn't differentiate between the stress we feel when we're preparing for a wedding or the stress we feel from grieving a death. It's still stress. And how are we managing that stress? What tools do we have in our toolbox for that? That's a healthy habit. That's stress management. First of all, recognizing the stress that we're under, and then finding tools that work for us to manage that stress. Being connected to people. This is a big one. That's a healthy habit, to have healthy connections that feed us and support us, that offer us the chances to serve. Being connected with other people, being belonging, having that sense of belonging, knowing where we are, where we belong, and fitting in. That and that could takes so many different forms. Being outside, that's another healthy habit to there are ways to be unhealthy outside, yes, but just getting that connection with nature is a healthy habit. So sleeping, eating, moving, connecting, serving, these are all healthy habits that have a bigger impact on our health than the number on the scale. But they're not as easy to track. And they don't sell things as much and as easily as helping people focus on that number on the scale. Weight loss is not a simple formula. I'm sure you probably have heard the saying, calories in, calories out. As long as our calories out are more than calories in, boom, we lose weight. It's simple, right? Well, if it was that simple, wouldn't we all be at whatever weight we think we want to be? It's not that simple. Did you know that our emotions have a real impact on how our body deals with food? You in your same body, we're not even talking person to person, and we're not even talking different meal. You in your same body eating the exact same meal, if you eat it in a hurry, you're trying to run out the door, shove your food in your mouth as fast as you can so that you can get out the door, or if you're having an argument with somebody, if you're just stewing on some really unpleasant experience that you had, and you're having that stress in your body, that same meal that you eat then, your body's going to respond to differently than if you're just having a lovely meal by yourself and calm and quiet, or surrounded by people that you love and laughing and enjoying yourself. Your body will take that same meal and will process it differently because of the hormones that are triggered when you're in a stress response. When you're feeling that stress, cortisol, insulin, to name a couple, are triggered. And that causes a difference in your digestion. So it's not a simple formula. It's not simply calories in, calories out. It's not simply hop on that treadmill and see how many calories it says you burn. That's not an accurate thing. So that weight loss is a very complicated thing. And how our body deals with food is a very complex thing. We're not machines. If we were machines, then yes, all of these cut and dried formulas would make sense, but we're not. Our body is a living thing. And our emotions, and combined with our physiology, all of that has an impact. It's not as simple as we're led to believe, because the simplicity is what sells. And contrary to popular belief, there are a wide variety of healthy, normal body sizes. Can you imagine how ridiculous it would be? My son just got a puppy. The puppy he got was a runt of the litter. We don't look at that runt of that litter and compare her to her litter mates and go, oh my gosh, look at that other puppy. They're so big. If they just had a little more self-control, we don't judge the bigger dog in the litter for being the bigger dog in the litter. This is the same breed, it's the same parents, born at the same time. And yet we just look at the size of those dogs and all the puppies in that litter and go, oh, okay, that's the size they are. It's ridiculous to think that we'd be judgmental of the size of the dog in a litter. We don't do that. We don't judge a beagle for not being as big and strong as a German Shepherd, because yeah, they're both dogs, but they're not the same. And yet we try to fit people into a certain body shape and size. And that's just not how it is. It's just not how it is. And it is possible for larger bodies to be healthy bodies as well. We are taught so often in so many places that that if you're large, automatically that means you're unhealthy. And that's just not true. Again, weight can have an impact on some health issues, but it does not have as much impact on as many health issues as much of the time as we have been taught. So next, there we go. There we go. What's the possibility? This is the fun part to talk about. The possibilities. The possibility, imagine this. You can weigh yourself or not weigh yourself, and it doesn't matter to you. Imagine the emotional freedom of that. One exercise I have some of my clients who are very attached to a number on a scale, I have them sometimes. It's like, I want you to weigh yourself at least 25 times today, because then we can see, oh, look, weigh yourself first thing in the morning. You weigh one weight. Then have your breakfast, weigh yourself again. Then have that glass of water, weigh yourself again. Then use the bathroom, weigh yourself again. Then wait a couple hours since you've eaten, weigh yourself again. Then just before lunch, weigh yourself again. After lunch, weigh yourself again. Weigh yourself so many times a day, and you'll see that you do not weigh this number this day. Your weight goes like this. It's going to fluctuate throughout the day. It's a moving thing, and that's perfectly fine. That's how we're designed to be. So getting that, taking the power of that number away, can you imagine that freedom? The possibilities that we can have respect for our body, regardless of what size it is. We can have the respect that leads us to developing these healthy habits. We can have a kind of respect that overrides the desire to stay up too late at night and then kill ourselves to get up the next morning. We can have the kind of respect that leads us to make food choices that are going to best support our bodies. We can have the kind of respect that allows us to look in the mirror and not tear and pick apart that reflection there and judge ourselves like that. We can have that kind of respect for our bodies, regardless of the size. We can have a realistic view of health, not a manufactured, bought and paid for view of health. We can have a realistic view of health. We can be free, again, be free from that self-judgment, be free from that shame, be free from that guilt. What would that be like? What is the cost of that guilt and shame and self-judgment? We can live a life where the last diet we went on is the last diet we're ever going to go on. Now, everybody has a diet, because if you eat, that's your diet, whatever your diet is, but it's not a prescribed kind of diet that you're buying into. But not that diet, but a diet that we're buying into. No more, I'm doing this, I'm doing this, I'm doing this diet, various diets that come and go. No more of that. That your diet then just becomes what you respectfully feed your body. Imagine that. Imagine the improvement in relationships with yourself and with others that can come from letting go of this idea that weight equals health, that health equals thinness, that if we're not at that thin size, that number on that scale that we think we should be, and that some of our health professionals tell us we should be at, what can we do with that? How many relationships would be improved if we could let go of that idea? I had this wonderful doctor who I started with her before I started this work, before I got my certification. And she never said anything to me about my weight. And I thought, why is she not talking to me about this? Is she just chicken to talk to me about this? Which that's not a good quality in a doctor, to have someone who's not willing to talk to you about things that impacting your health. And then over the course of time, not working with her, but independent of her, I started doing this work and realized that there's so many other things that determine our health so much more than weight. What she always looked at that I came to appreciate was she always, of course, my blood pressure, my blood sugar. She always asked me how I'm sleeping. She always asks me how I'm moving. She asks all the healthy habit questions. And she sees that my numbers in all these areas, my habits are good habits. And so she knows she doesn't need to talk to me about the number on the scale because my health indicators show otherwise, that my health is good. So she's an exception. I think more and more doctors are leaning this way, and that's wonderful. But too many doctors are not in that situation. Too many doctors still will, like another doctor that I had, first appointment I ever had with her, never seen her for anything else. And she's like, well, let's talk about this weight. First thing, without any other indicators. And she was a specialty doctor, so she didn't even know any of my other health history, but she didn't care. Unfortunately, that's way too common. But we can have that good relationship with ourselves, with others. Those relationships can be improved as we stop judging ourselves so harshly. And the improvements that can happen in all of these areas, this is the possibility. So what's your challenge for today? Your challenge for today is to not now sit down and go, oh, I'm not doing these things. I'm a failure at this. Your challenge for today is consider these healthy habits. How are you eating respectfully? How are you moving? Are you sleeping well? Are you connecting with others? Are you managing stress well? Are you being mindful? All of these things, these healthy habits, what are you already doing well with? Because chances are pretty high that you're going to be doing well at some of them. And then consider as well, what habits could use some work? Maybe I'm not moving as much as would be good. So how do I incorporate that? Maybe I can improve in that one. Choose one, only one healthy habit that you want to work on. And when I talk about movement, I'm not talking about go out and buy gym membership and commit to from being not active at all to working out 6 times a week. That's not going to happen. And if it does, it's only going to happen for a short time. You're going to burn yourself out. Well, I use the word movement more often than exercise because it's just about moving. And again, studies are showing that more natural movement long-term has a much better effect than making these big grandiose exercise plans, sticking with them for a little bit and then backing off because we burn ourselves out. So be honest with yourself about where you are. It's okay where you are. We're not going to make any progress if we don't first assess where we're starting from. So assess where you're starting from. What habits are good? What habits could use improvement? And then just pick one. And honestly, just a 1% change, 2% change can make a huge difference over time. When you're flying a plane, if you take off in New York and you're aiming for London and your guidance system is true, that's awesome. But if you are just 2 degrees off on your guidance system, you're going to end up somewhere way away from London. That little 2% makes a big difference over time. In that case, in that example, that's not getting to where you want to go. But in this case, we're using it. It's like that, using that 2% to go, okay, it does make a lot of difference. It makes a big difference. Little bit adds up. So what little bit can you do today that will improve your health that's not weight related? So again, any questions, any comments, anything, come find me at Calendly, CALENDLY.com/TLASTLE and book that free 15-minute call. I'd love to chat with you about any of these topics. And we'll see you tomorrow. Remember that you were created in the image of God, and that hasn't changed.